واجعلنا منهم ومن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر آمين يا رب العالمين. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. ويقول الله عز وجل في بداية سورة البقرة: ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم ثبتنا عند الموت بلا إله إلا الله آمين يا رب العالمين. Inshallah, I'm only going to be speaking with you for about a half hour, and I'll try and make it as interactive as I possibly can. The intent that I have of what I want to share with you is based really on some of the thoughts that you may have on the subject. I'd like for people to show of hands, and then I'll pick on you, to call out some names of Islamic subjects, Islamic sciences, something you study in Islam. Show of hands, please. Yeah? Economics? Okay, Iqtisadiyat, that's certainly an area of Islamic studies. Other areas? Yeah? Sharia? Law? Yeah? Usul al-Fiqh, principles of jurisprudence. What else? Yeah? Sirah, which is a component of a larger subject, which is Maqasid al-Sharia, purposes of the law. Yeah? Aqidah, certainly. But Sirah, I mentioned Sirah, but it's part of a bigger picture. What is that? Yeah? Moon site? .com or? Huh? Hadith? Definitely. You're missing some big ones still, yeah. History. History. What else? Political science? Whatever comes under that would probably be under Sharia, if there is mention. Say that again? No, Islamic science. That's not Islamic science. It's an Arabic word. Tafseer, certainly, Tafseer. So there's a lot to study. Somebody says, I want to study Islam. Bottom line, you've got a lot to study. And it's not like you can pick up a book or read one document or go through one curriculum and you basically know Islam. It's a very big academic endeavor, right? And of course, within the Islamic scholarly tradition, you have people that specialize in each one of these areas. Though Islamic scholars tend to be all-rounders, they know enough about all of these areas, but then they go and specialize in one, right? When you and I approach the subject of Islamic studies as contemporaries, people that probably many of us started engaging in Islamic studies later in our lives, right? Almost when you reach adulthood, late teenagers or college students or whatever, and you try to learn something about Islam, what are some of the resources at your disposal that you personally may have experience with? That you try to learn Islam, where did you get it from? Yeah. The Quran? Okay, what else? Yeah. Sunnifan.com. Go on. I'm sorry? Why Tawheed what? Okay. So the internet. Can you please tell me? Okay. Internet. What else? Books. Of course, in what language? Arabic? Really? I'm impressed. For most of you, Arabic books? English. Let's be honest. Okay. Lectures, tape, CDs, illegal MP3s, you name it. The ones that begin, please do not copy. Yeah, I got to tell you. No, I don't. I'm just kidding. So, we have primarily our resources are multimedia materials for most of us. Of course, attending conferences and attending lectures, at least lectures that are meant to teach you something. Not like this one, I'm not teaching you anything. But lectures that are meant to teach you an Islamic subject, or attending a class, taking a course, etc. Resources of this nature, however, are limited, correct? And so what we find among Muslims is a huge diversity in terms of their understanding of Islam. And if you are part of any community, even at the micro level, at an MSA or at a masjid or whatever, you'll find people that have a very different take on the same subject. Drastically different. And their take, of course, is based on things that they know to be true, things that they've learned. And what I tried to illustrate to you is Islam is a very deep thing. It's a very complicated subject. It's a profound study. And so to have a position that is concrete, 100%, this is the right way, for most people, it's not really based on actual knowledge of the subject. What is it based on? What is it based on? Experience? I think prayer should be done this way. What is that based on? Hearsay for many people. You know, it's scary, but it's true. For many people it is hearsay. For others, what is it? Opinion. Maybe they heard it from their imam of the local masjid. Maybe they read it on a website. Maybe they read that this hadith is sahih, etc., etc. And of course they trust it, so they take it. Now, there is, before I go into the real subject of the evening, what I want to share with you is one thing that we all have to be very, very clear on. Our deen is a deen of trust. Angel Jibreel entrusted the message to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam entrusted this message with his companions. His companions gave that trust to the first generation, and so on and so on and so on, correct? It is a deen of trust. In Western academic studies, especially history, the concept of trust is irrelevant. It's irrelevant. If a person says such and such happened, that can't be taken, because there is no concept of trust. There's only scientific evidence and non-scientific evidence, right? And one of the biggest problems with that the non-Muslims, especially Orientalists and stuff, have with Quran and Quran preservation, that it's been maintained in this way. Of course, there's other historical scientific evidence to it, but the issue of trust, which is at the heart of preservation of Quran, they don't really take it. They don't want to consider that issue. But we have always been a people of trust. Now, there are some among us who argue that I follow Quran and Sunnah because those are the true teachings of Islam, and I don't trust anybody else. Right? You've ever heard that before? Now, I want you to understand something very clearly. Between Quran and Sunnah and your application of Quran and Sunnah, there is something in the middle. What is in the middle? Your intellect. You're processing the information and then you're applying it, correct? So basically, when you say, I only follow Quran and Sunnah and I don't follow anyone else, what you are essentially saying is that you are the most qualified authority you could find to interpret what the Quran is saying and what the Sunnah is saying, and you don't find anybody better qualified to do so. Okay? Which is a very tall claim. Now, I just want to walk you through a little bit of this as a tangent subject, but I think it's important because it's a growing concern among youth. Disrespect for scholarship. You know the famous hadith, alaykum bi sunnati, be committed to my sunnah? You know the part of this hadith that is not often quoted? وَسُنَّةِ الْخُلَفَاءِ الرَّاشِدِينَ الْمَهْدِيِّينَ. What does that mean? The legacy of the rightly guided caliphs. Were they prophets? No. Yet the Prophet himself, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, commanded us in that same hadith to commit to their legacy also, in addition to his own. Which means he trusts that when they make a decision, it will be based on how he trained them, correct? And you will find people today that will say, I am true to Allah and His Messenger, therefore I am qualified to make corrections in some fatwa that Ali may have given radiallahu anhu, or Umar bin Khattab may have given radiallahu anhu, because according to the Sunnah, this is better. According to the Sahih Hadith, contradicts what Umar bin Khattab did radiallahu anhu, or contradicts what Uthman radiallahu anhu did. Now, as far as the textbook is concerned, that makes sense. Okay, here's the text, this is the hadith, and this is the action of the Sahabi, and apparently there's a contradiction. But there's a big difference here. You know what the difference is? We read a hadith, and those people, how did they read a hadith, or did they hear it from the mouth of the Messenger himself, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? We read about the historical context, and they lived the historical context. So if you were to compare who has a better understanding of the same text, among any of the scholars and a Sahabi, who will always win hands down? There is no comparison. There is no disagreement that the Sahaba's understanding of this deen is the most pristine, most solid understanding. And just to solidify the subject before you, across Islamic scholarship, there's diversity in Islamic scholarship. Across Islamic scholarship, If somebody wants to study tafsir, the science of interpreting the Quran and understanding the implications of the ayat of the Quran, you know what the bare minimum requirement is as far as which mufassir everybody has to know? Who's the mufassir that everybody has to know? Of course, the Rasul when he made tafsir of an ayat after him, which mufassir do you have to study if you're a student of tafsir? You know? There's one man. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. Was Sahabi of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. There is ijma' of the ummah united. If you pick up any book of tafsir, you will find mention of what Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said about this ayah, or that ayah, or that ayah, or that ayah. Why? Because he was entrusted with this knowledge, and the guarantee of that is given by Rasul himself. Anyway, I just wanted to make mention of this point because we see an increasing level of, I would call it, immaturity and intolerance. In terms of real knowledge of deen, where people argue the hadith says this, and these people don't know mustalah of hadith, they don't know usul of hadith, they don't know the science of narration, they don't know usul al-fiqh, they haven't studied the differences of opinion and the evidences of all the scholars that disagree, nothing, they've just read a website and they are saying the hadith says this, therefore you are doing kufr if you don't follow. It's a very immature position to have. It's not a very sound position to have. And you know, the last thing I'll mention is one of the fatwa of Bukhari, rahimahullah. Everybody knows who Bukhari is? Rahimahullah. You know what he said? He said it is haram for anyone to comment on a hadith unless they themselves either took it from someone who had ijazah in hadith, who themselves has certified knowledge of hadith themselves, or they themselves have ijazah. They can comment on a hadith. What do we find today? You go online, Google, Bukhari, prayer. Pick up a bunch of hadith, translate it in English of course. You print them out and say, I know everything there is to know about prayer. It's a very dangerous thing to do. It's an extremely dangerous approach. The last thing I'll tell you about Quran, especially about Quran, and then I'll go to the real subject, I promise this time, is that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Sahih Hadith said, whoever interprets the Quran from his own opinion, though correctly, is still sinful. Now listen to that again. If somebody interprets the Quran, and their interpretation is not invalid, it's not invalid, but the fact that they acted creatively in interpreting the text, they have actually also committed a sin. This is the degree of preservation of this deen that we enjoyed from the very beginning, and now we're seeing a serious decline in that understanding. So we have to try to be more sensitive, especially as youth, and I dare say impressionable youth, that can get caught up in a lot of propaganda. And just to give you a litmus test of the propaganda, what you have to be careful for are people that are saying such and such scholar or such and such person, they're going to hell and they're deviated or they're this and they're that. I mean, if your concern is learning Islam, you should be less concerned with sending people to hell than with learning Islam yourself, right? So we have to become much more careful about this issue, inshallah ta'ala, in our learning. Now, what I wanted to talk to you about, the month of Ramadan and its significance. Allah puts two terms, subhanahu wa ta'ala, together in this ayah that defines Ramadan. Shahr Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. Two key words in the ayah are Ramadan and Quran. Those are the two key terms. So basically, this is the month of Quran. This is the month in which our scholars, many of them, rahimahumullah, you know, they used to be scholars of hadith and fiqh and tafsir, other things. They used to put all their books of hadith away and they say, this is the month of Quran. We're only going to study Quran and teach Quran and memorize Quran and make long salah with Quran this month. This is the month of Quran. They used to give it special dedication. The reason I want to bring that up is because in my observation, Allah only knows best, as a people, especially as Muslim youth, we are very far from Islam anyway, but we're really, really far from the Quran. We have a huge gap between ourselves and Quran, for many reasons. But I want to try and encourage all of us to close that gap this coming month, to come closer to Allah Azza wa Jall's book. And these are really vague words, you know, come closer to Allah's book, so I want to get a little more specific in what I'm requesting of myself and all of you, inshallah. You know, the term huda, who can translate it? Guidance. The Quran declares itself huda, huda lin-nas, right? It's a guidance for mankind. Now the term guidance is kind of vague, and it can be taken in a whole number of ways. And I want to make it a little more specific with just simple examples, so you understand what the term huda linguistically means. Huda literally means to show someone the way. When do you show someone the way? Allah says Quran is guidance, in effect what He is saying is, this Quran illustrates a path. And that path leads to a destination. Let's take another common example. There's this person that needs to catch a flight in JFK. And they're stuck somewhere in Brooklyn. They don't know where to go. They pull over at a gas station, they ask for directions, the guy gives them directions, take a left here, take a right here, you'll get up on the Belt Parkway will turn into Van Wyck, there you are at the airport. He gives them step by step, 10 steps for the directions. And the guy says, thank you very much. Is he listening to those directions carefully or not? The person who needs to catch a flight. Is he, yes or no? Yes. Totally. He's desperate because he needs to catch his flight, correct? And this person, this gas station attendant, says, I'm pretty good at giving directions to the airport. So he makes a flyer of directions to the airport and passes them out to everyone who comes to get gas at the station. Do people want it? He's crazy. People don't want it. You don't give directions unless people ask for them or want them. Directions only help people that need them. Directions don't help anyone that don't need them. In effect, what I'm trying to imply is, if you and I, in our mentality, in our attitude, don't feel the need for directions, the Quran is not of help to us. Hudan, a guidance. Guidance does not guide anyone that doesn't want it. If we don't want it, it will not benefit us. It will not benefit us whatsoever. You will get the reward for, reciting it. You don't want guidance from Quran, you just want, ajr. So you're reciting Quran. You will, because the Prophet's command, the Prophet's promise is that you will get reward for every letter. Right? And so you will get that reward, but you will not get what you didn't ask for. You asked for reward, you got it. But you didn't ask for guidance, so you don't necessarily get guidance. And the Quran's primary function is what? Primary function. It's not a book of giving you rewards. What is it for? Guidance. So you can get secondary benefit out of Quran by memorizing it, by using it in prayer, by reciting it, by even learning, studying it. But if you don't want to take its directions, and you don't understand it as such, it's something that gives me directions, then the one thing you will not get from it is what it came for. And that is guidance. And so we need to, all of us need to understand this function, this essential function of Quran of being a guide for mankind. And this is why in the month of Ramadan, the ayah that defines the month of Ramadan that I read before you, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. What does Allah say immediately after that? هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. Immediately after that, after he says this is the month in which Quran was revealed, now people might mistake this to think this is the month where you should just get the most ajr out of Quran and that's it. Recite the most Quran, listen to Quran CDs, and you're done with this month. You got the most out of it. To protect Muslims from falling into that trap, what does Allah do immediately after? It is a guidance for mankind. هدى للناس. So you maintain the essential purpose of this book. Revive that relationship between yourselves and this book. Now, how is the Quran a book of guidance? Now, if you look at the contemporary audience, all of your contemporary audience, right? Muslims or not. You read Quran, one thing you find, almost every time it's very confusing, is that you're reading this translation and the subject doesn't seem to be completed. Right? It's not like there's a surah about just women, and there's a surah about just the history of the sons of Israel, and there's a surah just about fighting in the path of Allah, and there's a surah just about inheritance law. It's not like that, right? It's distributed. Even the surah that's called Surah Al-Nisa, does it only deal with women? No, about 60 ayat deal with the munafiqun, and then there are other issues with Ahlul Kitab and things like that, and the Day of Judgment. So even Surah Al-Nisa doesn't only have Nisa in it, right? And none of the surahs, almost all of the surahs don't deal exclusively with one subject. And that can be very troubling for a reader. You're reading Quran and you're thinking, well, this is very disjointed, The subject changed here. How come this was mentioned here, and it's mentioned there, and it's mentioned there, and it's mentioned there? In what sense is it a guidance if it's like this? That is a logical question to ask in our times. And Muslims ask this question all the time. Non-Muslims do, of course. They accuse the Quran of being incoherent literature. I talk about that when I teach Arabic class a lot, right, and respond to that claim. But nonetheless, it is a problem that Muslims face also, especially when they're reading translation. Now, how do we tackle this issue? The first thing you need to understand is that Quran's function of guidance The means by which it offers guidance to the people is two things, recitation and listening. That's the primary means by which the guidance is communicated. Recitation and listening. What is the formal event that makes you recite or listen to Quran? The institution that makes you recite and listen to Quran. What is it? Salah. Allah Azza wa Jalla instituted Salah, which ensures that at a few periods, with few gaps in the day, you will come back and seek guidance again and again and again. And just to make sure you understand this point, the Fatiha includes what words? Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. And Fatiha is the mandatory section of every rak'ah, isn't it? So we ask guidance every time we stand before Allah, and the longest part of the prayer, the standing, is the qiyam. And qiyam is entirely what? Quran. So in our salah, we are actually asking guidance until the next prayer. And then we get to prayer, and then we're asking for guidance until the next prayer again. We better feel the sense of loss in between. Now, I didn't talk about this, I'll mention it now. It's a lame joke, but I like it. My teacher told it to me, so I like it. What do we want in life? What's the biggest thing we want? I mean, when he gave this talk, he gave this joke, so I'll share it with you. There's a young man, he's sitting in the park, relaxing, and an old man walks by. He said, "Young man, what are you doing here?" He says, "I'm chilling, relaxing." He said, "No, you shouldn't relax, you're young, you have energy, you should do work, you should do something." He said, "What should I do?" He said, "You should sell fruit at least in the park. Just set up a table here and just start selling fruit." He said, "What should I do after that?" He goes, "Well, if you work hard at it, you can expand your business and get fruit tables." He said, "What should I do after that?" He goes, "Well, after that, you can get yourself a whole shack and sell fruit out of there." I says, "Then what do I do?" He says, "Just keep working hard at it, and eventually you'll have your own fruit market. And then after that, well, you can buy your own farm. So you're the distributor and you're the seller. You can make lots of money." I said, "What do you do after that?" He goes, "Then you're in a position to buy yourself a big house. Everything you want in that house." He says, "What do I do after that?" He goes, "Then you can relax. Sit in that big house and enjoy it." He goes, "No thanks, I'm already relaxing." You know what the concern is for human beings? To have everything they want. And you know what it is eventually that all of us want? If you don't feel it now, you'll feel it as you get a little bit older. Eventually we want a house to our name. We want a property that is ours. We start that from childhood. If you have siblings, I want my own room. Right? Why are you sitting on my bed? That kind of stuff, right? And eventually when you go into college, I got my own apartment. Or I'm sharing, but I get my own room. Right? People are proud of their space. When you get a little older, now I'm renting a nice house. And eventually, I just bought this house and throw a party. You're really proud of yourself. Even people that work in low-paying jobs for years and years and years, at the end of it, you ask them in their retirement, when you ask them, what is the accomplishment of your life? You know what they'll tell you? I bought a house. I've got this property in my name. This is the sense of stability. I'm going to have what I want in it. It can be decorated the way I want, right? It's something that I don't have to worry about the future anymore. Where am I going to live? Where's going to be the roof over my head? It's a matter of stability. And Allah put that in human nature. And so what does He offer us directions to in Quran? He offers us directions to our own property. Where is it? Jannah. Permanent residence. No maintenance necessary. No bills to pay. And you customize the way you like it. You can stay in it as long as you want. Permanently. Endlessly. And here are directions to it. Simple guidelines that you have to follow. But for every house, there's a price. For every property, there's a price. When you want to buy a house in this world, I know some of my friends, when I made them go to the city to college, they were cab drivers. And they work upwards of 70, 80, sometimes 100 hours a week just so they can buy a house. Just all they wanted of it. It was serious labor to get to that house, right? So Allah is offering us a path that leads us to a house. There's only one catch though. The catch is, He's offering you a property better than anything you've ever seen, ever, on TV or with your own eyes. And it is beyond anyone's imagination. The only catch is you can't see it yet. And the only other catch is it doesn't have a price tag. It doesn't have this much is what you have to pay. What He's demanding is your whole life. Give me your whole life, and The service agreement will come to an end when you are being put, when dust is being poured over you in your grave. If you can do that, you've got the property. If any other salesperson comes to you and offers you a deal like that, you're going to say, what? You crazy? I can't do that. I mean, give me at least a limit. How much should I give you? And then, we've got a business deal. And let me see what you've got to offer. In every business transaction, when there's a promise of the future, human beings ask for at least two things. They ask for, what do I get? Or actually, rather, not what do I get, when do I get it back? When do I get my investment back, right? That's the first logical question to ask if somebody comes to you with a business proposition. The second thing to ask, can I trust you? I mean, if fine, you're saying I'll get my money back next month, but who are you? Can I really trust you? So when the Quran offers this guidance, who are the only people that are actually going to dare to walk that guidance? That's the point I'm trying to make. The people who completely put their trust in Allah. People that have any doubt whatsoever, are not going to be able to walk this path. Because you have to have absolute confidence that this promise is true. Accepting Quran as guidance. There's another scenario, however. Somebody says, I already know Quran. I've studied Tafseer. I've memorized the whole thing. I've read it cover to cover. I know it. I don't need guidance anymore because I already know it. Right? Just like you offer somebody directions and they say, I already got it. I know how to do it. No thanks. So you will find ourselves having this attitude, alhamdulillah, we're already Muslim. We already know what the truth is. I don't need guidance. I already have it. I already accepted Islam. What I want to make sure you understand is that the ayah is Madani. And the ayah about Ramadan and about guidance is talking to Muslims. And then it's telling them to seek guidance. And what I want you to understand very clearly is that the greatest sunnah is the sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, our messenger, who was commanded in singular. Fatiha, the Surah Al-Fatiha, the ayah that makes us beg for guidance, Ihdinas Siratal Mustaqim is singular. Ihdi is singular. Who is the first person to say those words in history, among human beings? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he, till the day he dies, prays regularly, and in every prayer he asks Allah himself for guidance. Who's asking for guidance? Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's asking for guidance. That is the greatest proof that being Muslim is not the same as being guided. There's a big difference between the two. Becoming Muslim is a one-time event. And alhamdulillah, many of us have crossed that barrier. Right? And some of us, we were kind of on the corrupt side of things, and then we say, oh, alhamdulillah, in 1994 when Allah guided me, and then I stopped partying, right? But that's even an inappropriate term to use, because guidance does not exist in the past tense. Allah may have guided you at that moment, but that didn't guarantee your guidance for the rest of your life. The fact that you're Muslim, that's separate, that's permanent. Guidance of the Quran is not that cheap. It's not that cheap. Any other directions in life, once you know them, you know them. Even Quran. If you are a scholar of Quran, you've got a degree in Islamic studies, you've memorized it, you've studied it, Tafseer, that still doesn't mean you've got guidance from it. You may have knowledge from it. Guidance is different. Guidance is every single day. It's every single day. And I'll just give you just a couple of examples and I'll close. Okay? You know the story of Adam alayhi salam? How many times it's mentioned in Quran? How many times it's mentioned? Very good, right? 7 times. Spread across the Quran. Right? If somebody reads the Quran, maybe one juz a day, which means it takes them a month to finish reciting, they will actually come across the story every few days, evenly distributed. Every 3-4 days, they'll come across the story of Adam and Idris. Okay, every 2-3 days actually, every other day almost, right? And it's interesting why Allah spread the surah, or the mention of Adam alayhi salam, across the surahs in this way. Notice something. What are the 2 main characters in the story? Who are the 2 characters being compared in the story? Adam and Shaitan, Adam and Iblis, right? Alayhi salam wa la'nahullah, right? Now, let's look at what these 2 characters have in common. They both creations of Allah. They're both honored by Allah originally. They both disobeyed Allah, true or not? They both disobeyed Allah. So far, the story is exactly the same. The story is the same. And then Iblis turns to Allah and asks a question. خلقتني, or rather makes a statement. خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين. You created me from fire, you created me from clay. You all know the story. You know why I'm mentioning it? Think about his question. Is it logical? Fire is a greater thing than clay. Jinn can morph and change forms and fly and all of that. And he certainly has tenure over Adam. So in his issue, he didn't say no. The Quran doesn't record him saying no. Quran records him making an academic, a logical statement, which is what? You made me from fire. You made him from clay. Does it make sense? That claim, is that rational? It is actually rational. And you know what he told Adam alayhi salam, Surah Al-A'raf, Allah, when he catches Adam alayhi salam and he tells him what led you to eat from that tree, right? You know what the quote is? What the motivation of Adam alayhi salam was? Shaitan had come to him and told him two things. Either you will become angels or you will become permanent dwellers. That's really important to understand. You know why he mentioned permanent dwellers? When Adam alayhi salam was introduced to mankind, to angels rather, what did Allah say? إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. I'm appointing on the earth, someone who will continue in lineage. Khalifa is taken in different interpretations, but let's just take one. But the angels knew that the purpose of Adam is in Jannah or on the earth? On the earth. That's what the ayah says. And when Iblis goes to him, he says, you want to stay here forever? Just eat from that tree, because you know the plan is to take you to earth. That's what the plan is. And angels can stay here, or if you want to stay permanently, eat from that tree. So when Adam alayhi salam is caught, like Shaitan was caught, Iblis was caught, he gave an intellectual response, right? When Adam alayhi salam is caught, he could have very well have said, look, this is all predestination. You already knew I was going to get sent to the earth. That was the plan from the beginning. If you knew it, then it's not my fault. I'm just a trap in your plan. Right? Is that an intellectual response, yes or no? Can that be philosophically argued? Sure. But what's the response of our Islam? He accepts his guilt, and he makes tawbah to Allah when Allah teaches him the words. He accepts it humbly. For someone who wants guidance, you have been given two possibilities. You can try to become intellectual and question the will of Allah, and feel really smart about it too. Feel very smart about it. Oh man, I came up with this philosophical question, nobody's got the answer to it. If I do something, and Allah already knew I was going to do it, then it ain't my fault. Right? You've got two options. Allah is placing two options before all of us, and we get reminded of them every day. Every day you will have to make decisions, and you will make mistakes. And when you make mistakes, you will have the option of going the shaitan route and rationalizing your mistake, or you have the option of going the route of our father who made tawbah and was forgiven by Allah. You have the option. You get mentioned of that every time. And the stories in the Quran aren't stories. They're such profound lessons. They're such incredible lessons. You know, when you think of a movie or any other story, you think of hero and villain, right? And then like extra characters. When you think of Yusuf alayhi salam's story, who's the hero? Who's the main character? Who's like the guy you're looking to hear good news about? Yusuf alayhi salam. Who are the villains? His brothers. That's only in story life. In real life, things are more complicated, aren't they? You can't just label someone as a hero and a villain. People are human beings, they do bad things, sometimes they do good things other times. The question is, if the other brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam are all evil, why are they evil? Were they brought up in a bad environment? Who's their father? Yaqub alayhi salam. Who's his father? Yep, Ishaq alayhi salam. Who's his father? Ibrahim alayhi salam. So if you're going to talk about proper upbringing, you can't find a better bunch. Whose dad, grandfather, and great-grandfather are all prophets, not to mention their brother, right? Best possible upbringing. Isn't that true? So you can't say these people lived in a rough neighborhood and they didn't learn their ethics properly, that's why they did what they did. You can't say that. You can't just say black and white, they're villains. I mean, you're speaking about children of a prophet. Direct children of a prophet. What made them? What made them go to that extent? What is mentioned in this story is something very real to human beings. Good people, out of jealousy, can do some crazy things sometimes. And did they make tawbah at the end? Did they regret what they did at the end? Sure. Because they're not permanently labeled as villains. And they must be defeated. This is real life. This is not a story. So the lessons in Quran, these stories that we basically romanticized and turned them into, just here's the story, here are the characters, this is what happened at the end. They all have, every word has such guidance in it for us, for our daily affairs, for our day-to-day lives, and we tend to ignore them. Quran can be studied, and we have to fulfill our obligations to Quran, a number of things we have to do for Quran. Now, here's where I'm going to leave you with a list of things to do or to worry about this month, inshallah, and I'll close. The first thing, you have to fix your attitude towards the Quran. Really under saying, Iman bi kitabillah, belief in the book of Allah. The first thing that has to change is our attitude. What does this book mean to me? Why do I need to study it? Does it offer me any guidance? Am I actually lost? Do I actually believe in this book or do I believe this book? You know the difference in semantics? Believing the book and believing in the book? All of us, alhamdulillah, believe in the book. But when it comes to believing the book, it's saying something is true, your intellect doesn't agree, you still believe it. How many people have the attitude of Adam alayhi salam? That's the question to be asked. Our attitude towards this book has to be fixed. The second thing that has to be fixed is our etiquette towards this book, our mannerism towards this book. The time we give it, the way in which we recite it. You feel embarrassment if you have the funny accent and you're speaking and everybody look at you and you feel embarrassment, you try to fix your accent. And yet we recite Quran with our hideous knowledge of tajweed. And it's such disrespect for Quran. Yet we don't feel concerned that we should learn proper etiquette to recite the word of Allah. After all, these are words that came out from the mouth of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. From my beloved, from your beloved. They came out of his mouth. They were given to him by Allah himself. You're quoting the messenger of Allah. You ever think about that? Quran is not just recitation. It is a quotation of the messenger of Allah. He said, quote, this, and Allah told him to say so. Revelation directly from Allah. We're quoting. So our mannerism, the concern to learn tajweed, proper recitation, time to memorize more and more of it, etc. has to change. The etiquette towards Quran, especially in Salah, and the prayer has to change. And make this Ramadan an opportunity to do so. When you stand before Allah and you recite Fatiha, I know you recited it 1,000 times, but recite it like Allah is right in front of you and you're on the Day of Judgment. Recite it like you really mean it. This word of Allah, this is not just any other words. It's not just something you memorized. That's what it was when we were kids. Now we should know better. It shouldn't be the same, right? So our mannerisms have to change. The third thing that has to change is our concern to understand it. You can't take guidance if you don't understand the directions. Right? If you don't speak, Italian and I give you directions in Italian, it doesn't mean anything to you, right? So this book, a lot is lost in translation. A lot is lost in translation. And all of us should feel the thirst to want to fill that void between ourselves and Quran, and gap of translation. We should try to learn the Arabic language to the best of our ability. Of course, we may not be able to do that during Ramadan, but at least try to fulfill the other obligations. And until you do learn Arabic, at least pick up a good book of Tafseer and study. Understand at least what you memorize and what you use in Salah. What you use in the prayer. Constantly. Look at the fruits of those ayat, the benefits of those ayat in your personal life. This is how, the Sahaba, they looked at Quran. They looked at Quran as a manual for life. Whenever they heard an ayat, they applied it right away. Guidance, that's what you do, right? Take a left, you take a left. That's what they used to do. Quran for us is more about ceremony. Good recitation, you pop in a CD and you run along ride. You'll get ajr for it, but it's ceremonial almost, right? And there's a big nikah, and we'll open with a recitation of the Quran. By the way, when the nikah happens, what did the Prophet ﷺ use to recite? What ayat? Ittaqullah ya ayyuhan nas. Ittaqu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum min nafsin wahida. Right? Be conscious of your Lord, the one who created you from a single cell. Why is that ayah recited at the time of nikah, at the time of marriage? You know why? Because between the husband and the wife, the husband is being told, you are not being put in the situation or in the relationship where you're the owner, you're the Lord. Who's the Lord? Allah is the Lord. Fear Him and and take care of your relationship. He created. He's putting you in this place. Guidance is being offered at that ceremony. By the choice of the ayah choice is by the Rasul himself. It's the established sunnah of the khutba of nikah. Right? So we really have to become people that try and seek guidance every time from Allah's book. Really try to find direction from Allah's book. You know, one of the practices I tried, I don't guarantee it, but really I recommend trying it. If you ever feel like you need direction, which you should all the time, open up the book of Allah and start reciting, and wallahi you will find guidance. You will find what to do. You will find an answer to what you need. And subhanAllah, none of the stories are buried in history. None of the ayat of Quran are irrelevant today. All of it offers this guidance today. Even Alif Lam Mim. Who knows what Alif Lam Mim means? Who knows what it means? Allah knows best, right? Alif Lam Mim, Kaf, Haya, Ain, Sad. You don't know what it means? But how does the first major surah of Quran, Fatiha is the introduction, the biggest surah of Quran is Baqarah, and it begins Alif Lam Mim. Now if I'm saying every ayah of Quran is guidance, how is Alif Lam Mim guidance too? Again, a logical question, right? Trying to be intellectual. Tell me where the guidance is in Alif Lam Mim. Well, here's the guidance. Allah introduces you to the book and gives you words whose meanings only He knows. So He's correcting your attitude. You know nothing, I know everything, and if you come to the book with this attitude, then you will find guidance. So He begins by humbling us, Alif Lam Mim. And then He gives us His lesson. If you don't have that attitude, you're not going to find much in Allah's book. I really pray that we are able to take advantage of this month to the utmost, to revive our relationship with Allah's book, to maintain, try to get it in routine, and try to get it in routine before Ramadan so you don't lose any Ramadan days. Get up early, before you go to work or school, figure out an hour or so where you can just learn, study, memorize, do something with Quran. Just give your morning to some of that chunk of your time, every single day. Starting now, so you're in the routine by the time Ramadan comes. Don't say I'm going to start when Ramadan comes, because getting in a routine takes a few days, right? So you'll lose a couple of Ramadan days just getting into the routine. And do something you've never done before for Allah in Ramadan. Do something that just really shows Allah your commitment to this book, that you really want to get the most out of this book. I'm also extending, using this opportunity, invitation to all of you. Inshallah ta'ala, I've made the commitment at Masjid al-Quran in Bayshore to conduct duroos of Quran every night after the Tarawih prayer. Inshallah, I'll be going through the entire Quran, Fatiha to Nas, ayah by ayah, in brief translation and explanation when necessary. But through the entire Quran. So for many of you who haven't read the Quran in entirety, who would want to know what its meanings are, who are confused by some ayat, they don't understand the context and how it places in the passage, issues like that I'll try to explain in that series. Inshallah, we'll go through one juz of Quran every single night. It will end around midnight every night. It will be a long endeavor. But inshallah, if you have the time, I would recommend, if you don't know Arabic, if you'd like to get introduced to Allah's book, it's not a very academic study. The purpose of it, again, is to introduce a casual introduction for Muslims and non to Allah's book in a way that makes them appreciate Quran as guidance. That's my intention. Just look at Quran as guidance. I won't go into deep linguistic issues and the historical context. When necessary, I will, but I don't want to make it an academic series at all. This is a series just for us to get a little bit closer to Allah's book and appreciate His guidance. I pray that anything good that came out of my mouth is rewarded by Allah Azza wa Jal, and I pray that all of us have an attitude of sincerity for every second that we spend for His cause. I pray that Allah Azza wa Jal accepts this gathering and all of the gatherings of Muslims, and I pray that Allah Azza wa Jal protect and continue to protect the honor of the Muslims. Barakallahu wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Okay, so inshallah, we have the Q&A right now. There should be a wireless mic for the sisters over there. So you can get it. Anyone have any questions? Well, wait, I'm sure it's somebody. We have 200 people in. There we go. Hold on.
Questioning when is it okay to question? Few tips on that. The first thing, don't question around people that know the same amount as you. Okay? If you know that the guy that you're talking to basically has the same level of knowledge, then questioning will actually put that doubt in his or her mind, right? You should make it a habit to ask people that you know are scholars or know the subject well, and pose questions to them. And also one should be careful in the manner in which they pose questions. We already believe it's Allah's word, right? So we shouldn't pose questions like, what's the point of saying this? Because that would be sort of blasphemous. But to develop a more respectful attitude towards the way questions are framed. Like, what is the wisdom of Allah that you understand behind this? Right? So questioning is fine, so long as it's within respectful terms. And it's done in the appropriate setting. Like, if I'm just sitting in a iftar with some guys and like, no, Quran says this, and those guys don't know any Muslim, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Then that's a major problem. That's a serious problem. We have to show better etiquette towards Allah. So these are the two major tips on that issue, inshallah. Anything else to say? No problem. Yes. I'll give you my personal opinion on the subject. You're free to disagree. Number one, for people that don't know Arabic, the primary Islamic study should be Tafseer al-Quran, for many reasons. One, it's the easiest thing to start with. Two, it solidifies Aqidah. And three, its context is determined by Allah, not by man. Meaning Bukhari is organized by Bukhari rahimahullah, chapter wudu, chapter this, chapter that. But the order of Quran is determined by Allah Himself, right? So I recommend that over anything else when people don't know any other Islamic prerequisite sciences like Arabic, usul, tafsir, etc., or hadith, and isnad. The thing about interpreting text, especially Bukhari and things like that, you know how Quran has tafsir, right? Hadith has something called sharh. So Quran has tafsir and hadith has sharh. Sharh of al-Bukhari, the most famous one, is called the Fath al-Bari. It's a voluminous book, about 24 volumes, written by a scholar named Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. It's entirely in Arabic. I think there were some PhD theses to translate one of the volumes or something. But the whole thing is in Arabic. Now, you can wait for the whole thing to get translated, or if you really seriously want to get into hadith study, or any other serious Islamic study, hadith study I would consider an advanced Islamic study. Okay? You'd have to get into Arabic. You wouldn't have a choice, at this point at least. Also, we have to be concerned with translation of Quran and Hadith. Above and beyond that, you've got these volumes of books by a scholar, and imagine figuring out all the issues in translation in there. Right? You've got a 600-page mushaf, and we worry about the issues of translation even in Quran, right? Now you've got a 40,000-page book translated. So who's going to sift through the issues in translation? What was lost in translation, what was maybe taken out of context, etc., etc. So the easier thing, really, for Islamic study students is to go and study Arabic. By the way, the Orientalists do that a lot better than we do. Yelk, Hartford Seminary, University of Chicago, that's their Yelk program, Harvard. All of these guys that are doing Islamic studies PhDs have to have proficiency in classical Arabic, French, German, and English, at least, and Persian, before they can actually get into a PhD program in Islamic studies. So they take it seriously. You know why French and German? Because the last 300 years Orientalists wrote anti-Islamic literature primarily in French and German. So they have to study that stuff. On the other hand, there's us, who wait for something to get translated in bad English. So that would be my personal stance on that issue, inshallah. Unless you have a scholar of hadith, you can do something. If you don't have any other questions, I just want to make a quick comment about one last thing about hadith. You have a question? Okay.
The question I have, this is something I really didn't want to bring it here, that people will take it other way, but this is a very question I need to know the answer, if you may help out on this. I have read some information about, recently there were some information given on one of the website about the moon sighting, but this is not a moon sighting question, but I'm going to the real question on that, I don't take it in that way. One of the ayah in the Quran says about the witnessing the moon, seeing the moon. The word is shahida, see. They interpreted it in 4 different ways, saying that the word shahida, it could mean to see, and then say it could be to know, then say it could be to understand, so forth. Because this is because in the context of seeing the moon, and also there's a hadith from Rasulullah say, do not fast until you see the moon. Now, is it okay to understand that the word shahida directly applies to see, based on the hadith, or it can be otherwise meaning those additional meanings are given. So this, I don't have knowledge, but it's just a question in my mind. Who to ask?
All right, you have to, I can recommend some literature on this issue. But first things first, linguistic analysis is not necessarily Quranic analysis. There are criteria in usul tafsir that you have to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And linguistic analysis, which is what is being offered, may contradict what comes before it in priority. And if it does, it's rejected. Okay? One of the things that contradicts it is the established practice of the companions of the Messenger, for example, ijma' as-sahaba, right? Now, shahida, linguistically, does have the meaning of witnessing, testifying, attesting to something, certifying something, seeing something. It has those implications. But, and I'm not commenting on the tafsir of the ayah in particular, sorry for that. But before we can make a conclusion about it, just using linguistics as a reference, one has to go through the entire cycle of usul tafsir and then make a conclusion. That chain cannot be ignored. Meaning, where does it start? Quran, interpreting Quran, then the Sunnah, then the Sahaba, then the established ijma' of the scholars after them, and then linguistic analysis, right? And so then you reach a conclusion. That's how usul tafsir works. So we can't ignore those principles and say, well, the word can be taken this way or that way or the other way. Because that can lead to huge problems in the Quran. For example, الَّذِينَ يَظُنُّونَ أَنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُو رَبِّهِمْ. Proper close rendition in English would be those who have certitude, who are absolutely certain that they are going to meet their Lord. One that has another meaning. You know what that is? To kind of be suspicious about something. So the translation would then be, those who are a little bit suspicious that they're going to meet their Lord. So if you're just taking linguistic analysis, what happens? You can run into major problems, right? So, the Arabic is kind of cool in that way that one word can have like 80 different meanings, but the spectrum is limited by usul tafsir. That it's not the entire spectrum of meanings, but the spectrum is limited to a few, or maybe just one, by usul tafsir. So this is where I think that's the most logical response. If you're fluent in English, then I guess you could read Ma'arif al-Quran is out on PDF, I think, online somewhere. His Muhammad Shafi's English tafsir, or Urdu tafsir translated into English, or if you have the Urdu copy, you can get that. Otherwise, I would recommend some Arabic stuff for it. Sorry. Yeah. Actually, you guys have first, not come to you. Yeah.
Yeah, in Ramadan, the devils are chained up.
Yeah.
Right? So in Ramadan, devils are chained up, right?
So does Congress pass any bills?
No, I just had a question in relation to that, right? So when the devils are chained up, basically that means that they're not affecting us as much in terms of praying and all these kinds of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what about sins that we still continue in Ramadan, right?
Yeah.
So the devils are not there as to affect us as much, right?
Right.
But we still continue to sin. And people still don't pray during Ramadan, right?
Yes.
And that's a sin throughout the whole year. But they still continue this. Or for example, people don't fast. Now, what do you recommend in terms of these kind of weaknesses? What do they do to it? What can we do about those sins that still don't go away in Ramadan?
Okay. Two things. I'll tell you a true story. A really good friend of mine in North Carolina is doing his PhD in the history of science. He's writing a paper on Islam and science. He had a coworker who he used to talk to about Islam. Every time the word Islam came out of his mouth, 3 keywords: Islam, Muhammad, Quran. Any of these words, if they came out of his mouth, and Allah, it was Allah also. Any of these words ever came out of his mouth, you know what happened to that person? He would start wheezing, red eyes, allergic reactions, almost feel like vomiting. He'd get very angry and upset, all this kind of stuff, right? So he just stopped talking about Islam ever. He's not giving like preaching dawah, he just bring it up casually, and this guy would have this reaction. And he tried it in Ramadan and nothing. And he talked to him directly about Islam, nothing. The day Ramadan ended, he talked to him again, and the same thing again. The shayateen are an entity. They are, we believe in that already, but it is part of, experience of the Muslims, right? That this entity exists. But the people that are addicted to sins, and they're addicted to missing their obligations in deen, the change doesn't come from behavior necessarily. The first change is a change, it's a sort of a cognitive change, a change in the way they think. If you know someone like that, right, and they're the same in Ramadan as they are outside of Ramadan, right, the best thing you can do for them in Ramadan is give them an opportunity to hear a reminder, an effective reminder. Okay? Maybe by some enticing of taking them to, for free pizza or something, driving them to a really good khutba or lecture or something, right? Or papa taping when you're driving with them. Because at that point, the shayateen will not turn them on. The shayateen usually, what they do is they cause distraction. وَأَلْغَوْ فِيهِ was even the tactic of the mushrikun. Whenever Quran is being read, then start talking about something else. Or cause a distraction, right? But in Ramadan, if they're Muslims, they have a soft corner to this. Already Ramadan, plus the extra help is not there, the volunteers, shayateen are not there. So they'll be in a better position to actually maybe get effect from some of that reminder. The thing you don't want to change is behavior. The thing you want to try and change are the hearts, right? And Allah changes the hearts. But He changes them by means of reminder. Right? So what you want to do for people like that, you want to put them in a position of remembrance. Maybe it's like, I really recommend like the Awla Ki Akhira series. Like take one of those in compliment or something, right? Or, take them where usually a lot of masjids around have, I don't want to say it, but really boring khutbas, right, for Jummah. So try to take them somewhere a little more exciting, where they get a little fired up, right? Or take them to a masjid where there's really good tarawih or really beautiful recitation, something like that. But you shouldn't necessarily enforce them to change their behavior, because behavior will change once there's a change in the heart. You don't have to worry about the behavior. You have to worry about fixing their attitude. Ourselves? The best thing I can tell you, there are different levels of people. There are people that can make a commitment and stick to it for themselves, and then there are people that become weak in their commitments. The people that become weaker in their commitments and they fall into temptation and things like that, the best advice for them is to be in good company constantly, as much as they possibly can. They have to, if they're usually at home, just go to a masjid. Just go somewhere where it's least likely for you to sin. Right? If you have to do your homework assignment on your laptop, you could do it sitting in your dorm room, or you could go in the masjid and do it in somewhere, right? Which is safer, obviously. Right? So just take the safer option and be, right? Be among the righteous, be with the righteous, okay? Be with the truthful. So that company will strengthen you. And besides that, the only thing I can recommend is doing things that involve a lot of effort for the path of Allah. Like, there's a really faraway class that you got to drive all the way to and go and attend or something. Something that's going to involve strenuous effort, takes time and effort, that in itself is a purifying experience. Inshallah. Yeah.
I have a question that you said, I was arguing, not arguing, I'm going to go back and forth creating a coworker about, I guess, different, this person's question, and I'm just talking about Musa. So in that, I just said, just I don't have to guys on the straight path. So is that wrong that I said that? Or is that?
No, you can ask non-Muslims for the guidance of non-Muslims. You can. But then there was the ayah of Ibrahim alayhi salam, who used to ask for guidance of his father, but after his father died, he used to still ask for forgiveness of his father. Then the ayah came down telling him to stop. Right? The Quran records this incident, right? Why? Because you can't ask for salvation of people who died on the false belief. But if they haven't yet died, then you ask that Allah guide all people.
No, I mean, it's not okay that I told the person, let's just each say, you say God and ask God to guide on the straight path.
That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's okay.
No,
That's just
that's what you want to do.
Right, okay.
If they're genuinely asking, Allah will guide them.
Okay.
Inshallah. I'm sorry.
Why is that the testimony of one person is sufficient for the beginning? But we require two for the beginning. Is it because we're too hasty to jump into it?
I don't know. I'll tell you something about my personal Islamic studies. I don't concern myself with the things that don't directly apply to me. And I trust scholars. And certain scholars I trust, and if they give a rationale in their position, enough for me. I don't do like in-depth research into things that I don't think affect my life directly. So I don't study. Yeah. Then, if you get to that point, it's incumbent upon you to study, seriously study, so that you are not yet in a position to weigh one argument over the other, because you're not qualified to do so, right? You're like in third grade math, and two guys are debating over a calculus formula, and it's irrelevant to you, right? But so if you find yourself in that state of confusion, it becomes incumbent upon every Muslim who's in that state of confusion to actually study the subject. But until then, you should trust at least a scholar. Because we don't have a choice in that matter. If you say, I don't trust any scholar, you're crazy. Because that's what we have in Islam. We have the legacy of the scholars. Even the people, the most hardcore, like, I don't follow any scholars, they'll also name a scholar. You know that? Also, I have a sheikh. I only listen to him. I thought you don't listen to a sheikh. Well, he doesn't count. Yeah.
Are there certain activities during the fasting time period during the day that will negate our fasting besides the obvious eating and drinking?
Yeah. You want me to talk about those? They're obvious. Well, I will talk about instead in the 5 minutes that I have left. Are the external versus internal reality of Islam. Okay? Externally, there are the legal requirements of Islam, like eating, drinking, intimacy between husband and wife, etc. That can negate your fast, right? But Islam also has a moral dimension. And the moral dimension, if you want to use contemporary terms, subjective. It's not quantifiable, it is subjective. Eating is quantifiable. Either you ate or you didn't, right? It can be quantified. Tell me, how is kindness to parents quantified? Can you quantify it? This is where the line is between kindness and not, right? You can't. The same way, humility can't be quantified, right? Remembrance of Allah, how conscious you are of Allah, it really can't be quantified. The fasting, the purpose of it, there's the external of it, which is not eating, not sleep, not drinking, not having relations with the wife, etc. But the internal of it is the actual purpose of fasting. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, the ayah ends. So you can all have consciousness of Allah. Is consciousness of Allah quantitative or qualitative? It's totally qualitative. And if you miss that, you miss the whole point of the fasting. Now let me tell you an example of a waste of effort. You're sitting the whole day looking at the iftar. Or, your entire day was spent thinking about how amazing the iftar is going to be. Right? And your entire day was spent going around the aisles of the grocery store or ordering certain types of food. And you're just, oh man, today's iftar is going to be awesome. Right? Well, you missed the whole point. The point was to get you away from food so you can remember Allah. If you got away from the food and you still remembered only the food, then where did the Khutba go, right? The same way with all the other things that we're forbidden from. We're not just to stay away from them so we just keep looking at them and say, if only. No. We're away from them so we can worry about other things. So we can strengthen other parts of our intellect, right? The moral element, dimension of our intellect. That's what we have to do. So don't miss the point of the fast, please. Do not miss the point of the fast. And let me, one thing that I want to share with you that most people don't know, the word sama yasumu sawman, the word for fasting in Arabic, you know what it was used for originally? It was used for training battle horses. They used to make the horse not drink a lot for a long time because on the battlefield, among the Arabs, if you take the camel, he's kind of slow, so you need to take the horse. But if you take the horse, he dehydrates too fast. So he dies, basically, which means you die. So they used to train their horses for battle, and they used to make them do what is called sawm in Arabic. And that's the term used in the Quran for fasting. You know what that teaches us? That teaches us that fasting was a means of training for a larger purpose. Linguistically speaking, it is training for a greater cause. It's not the cause in and of itself, right? The greater cause is taqwa of Allah. But to get there, you have to have fasting. There are only a few things in Quran that lead to taqwa. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. There are only a handful of them. Fasting is one of them. Fasting is one of the things that can lead you to become conscious of Allah. Don't lose that opportunity and just obsess over things that you made so much effort to get away from. Right? So you can concern yourself with other things. I hope that, inshallah, that suffices for a response. You have a comment? Yeah.
I was just wondering, if people who believe that all you need is the Quran and that you can interpret it yourself and you don't need the Sunnah and Hadith, how to speak to them in a proper manner?
You second grader, you start with that. And then you say to them, what is wrong with you? Then you say, fine, let's say you're right. You ask them, is the Quran full of contradictions? What will they say? No. That's why we believe in it. And you say, okay, in one place Allah says, فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. Between you and him is animosity, treat him as though he's your intimate friend. Is this an ayah of tolerance or intolerance? What I just read before. If there's animosity between both of you, then you treat him like your intimate friend. Tolerance or intolerance? Tolerance. You go to Baqarah and you find قَاتِلُوهُمْ وَقْتُلُوهُمْ حَيْثُ ثَقِفْتُمُوهُمْ. Kill them wherever you find them. Tolerance or intolerance? Intolerance. Contradiction? One place you're saying treat them like your best friend. The other place Allah is saying kill them wherever you find them. Which one is it? You can't be the best friend on the battlefield and then kill them. What does it mean? Yeah, so then how do you resolve it? The only way to resolve the contradictions, apparent contradictions in the Quran, are historical context. Where is historical context? Does the Quran give historical context? No. It's all in the seerah. And if they tell you no, that's obvious because this is Meccan Quran and that is Madani Quran. They will say that, right? There's a Meccan Surah and that's Madani Surah and that's why there's no contradiction. They say, how did you know it's Meccan or Madani? Where did you get that from? Is there an ayah that says this is the Meccan ayah? No. That's in the seerah too. Then there's another problem, another symbol. These are just second-grade arguments from people who deny hadith. Second-grade arguments. You don't need more than that. They say hadith can't be trusted because it was hadith can't be trusted because it was transmitted by men, and I don't trust men. That was kind of funny. But so you say, okay, fine, you don't trust hadith. Great. Did Allah protect the Quran? They say, no, Allah guaranteed He will protect the Quran, and He didn't guarantee that He will protect hadith. That's the tagline they use all the time, right? You say, okay, fine. How did Allah protect the Quran? Did He send a safe from the sky? You put the Quran in it, you close it, you can never touch it. How did He protect it? What was the means? There's always a means, right? Like Allah destroyed, the nation of Noah by means of a flood, right? There's a means. Or Allah helped the sons of Israel by means of parting the water? How do you protect? How did Allah protect the Quran? Yeah, Hufaz. People who memorized the Quran and transmitted it. Who memorized the Quran? The Sahaba. Who's transmitting the Hadith? Okay. I trust them for Quran, I don't trust them for Hadith. If they can't be trusted for one, then they can't be trusted for the other. Right? You can't say, oh, Allah is somehow magically making you say the right thing when you recite Quran. When it comes to Hadith, Allah kind of removes that protection and then you say whatever you want. It's the same person. that's the actual intent of these people. The intent isn't to deny Sunnah. The intent is actually to take out the entire deen. مُذَبْذَبِينَ بَيْنَ ذَلِكَ. This is mentioned. These people are particularly mentioned. Find the ayah of Surah Nisa. I'll give you a clue. Find the ayah of Surah Nisa and talk about the people that deny hadith. There's an ayah directly talking about these people. يُفَرِّقُونَ بَيْنَ اللَّهِ وَرُسُلِهِ. They cause distinction between Allah and His messengers. And they want to find a path in between the two. What is it between Allah and the messenger? Nothing. So they want to find, because there's a unit, right? So if you're going between the two, then you're neither on Allah, you're neither following Allah nor the messengers. So you feel like you basically got away with following anything. Without following anything. So these are, simple arguments, but then there are even more academic type responses, but these are usually enough for people. The contradictions can't be resolved, Makki Madani can't be resolved, the preservation of Quran cannot be defended if you deny hadith.
Can you define what ayah that was?
What ayah was?
The contradiction one?
No, I'm not going to tell you the ayah, just look it up. Surah Nisa. It's a great read. It's 176 ayahs. But I'll tell you it's above 70 to make it easier. And my whole point is to encourage you to recite Quran.
Is that